So I'm a bit late to the party when it comes to Pokemon Horizon's latest controversy. At least, hopefully, the episode that's airing today later isn't as controversial. For context, the Rising Volt Tacklers meet up with the Paldea League Association to get permission to go down to Area Zero. Of course, being Pokemon, everything needs to be done via battle. Combat is a metaphor after all. And of course, they're dealing with Geeta, the I'm incapable of holding back in a Pokemon battle character. So Liko, Roy, and Dot all are battling Geeta, which the Horizons trio ends up winning over. I will mention this was by the skin of their teeth after all. So naturally, the outcome of this battle ruffled a few feathers. On one hand, you have the side of the fandom treating Geeta as an inept loser, even pulling out the I am utterly incapable line and just truncating it to that. And of course, the fact that she was never meant to be the final boss of the original Scarlet and Violet games, she was more or less a nice stepping stone for the true champion, Nemona. And of course, the whole professor battle, which was honestly much harder than her. Others say the Horizons trio only won because of plot armor. So, where exactly do I stand on this? For one thing, plot armor just means I didn't like it because every single main character has plot armor, but that's not a discussion for today. The discussion for today is Geeta. I think a good deal of the frustration from Geeta losing to three children in Horizons comes from two factors. One, her game counterpart. Like I said, she was just Nemona's warm-up boss. The other issue is over the 20 years of precedent Ash has for better or for worse. For decades, Ash's anime was the one who painted our perception of what an animated Pokemon champion should be. As much of a lazy, incompetent oaf Alder was portrayed as during the black and white days, his Pokemon were still scaled far above anyone else in that series. That's probably why Go being the co-protagonist was so controversial. It's hard to have equal footing co-protagonist when you have one of them have 20 years of content and the other is the new kid on the block. Fans will naturally gravitate towards one so strongly that anytime the other gets a lot of attention, it's seen as an usurpation. But I'm not here to talk about Go. Instead, I'm here to talk about Geeta. Those of you who are longtime viewers of this channel know that I'm not a fan of using realism, and that's realism in quotes, to be the deciding factor in whether or not a battle's outcome is good or not. In fact, I'm against the idea quite strongly. Because realistically, running into someone like Tobias and getting walloped by him is absolutely in the realm of possibility within real life competitions. However, a force being from nowhere is absolutely horrific storytelling. This is why in tournament arcs you tend to have rivals who either have developed backstories during the tournament arc or you were doing that in the pre-tournament arc. Stories need to be built on some kind of foundation, and if you are basically just throwing one-shots with little backstory to the protagonist, that's not really an interesting tournament arc unless it's just an effects reel. This was actually my biggest criticism of Pokemon Journeys and the Masters 8 as a whole. It wasn't that Ash was beating trainers with way more experience than him. It was that the plot was so underdeveloped that we're not given much of a reason to care about why these characters are here other than you're strong. The first rule of combat in any plot is that combat is a metaphor. You need to have this fight have some kind of meaning for the characters or the plot as a whole. The context for Ash, these battles were against champions because at the end of the day, that was his goal. You beat the League, and then you beat the Elite Four, and then you beat the champion, as we understood it for decades. It's why champions appear to be such a force beyond the protagonist. That's what the plot needs them to be, a force simply beyond the protagonist. The plot mountain has to go up when it comes to stakes, and if your ultimate end is champion, then that champion better thrash people. However, Horizons is different. Geeta doesn't have the godly allure of Cynthia, Lance, or anyone else, mainly because the plot doesn't need her to have that allure. Geeta just serves as another powerful trainer to test convictions. Geeta's role in the story is to see whether the Horizons trio and the Rising Full Tacklers are worthy of braving Area Zero, and to be honest, I think Horizons does that ultimately well. Because early in the series, the Horizons cast fought very conventionally, a trait Captain Pikachu often called them out on. Now they're up against an opponent who is more than willing to get their hands dirty while playing even on a defensive stance, whether using Needle Guard to harm them and protect themselves, or having them strike Glamora directly, have toxic debris activate and poison the entirety of their team, and then amping this up with Venoshock, and then splitting Power Gem into an area of effect attack. Then uses Memento as a last act of spite to further weaken the two Pokemon on the field. Only for the protagonist to be equally as dirty, Liko attacks her own team in order to counter Memento with Crocolore, just so the kids can have the chance of winning. And they ultimately succeed at this. So, does this mean Geeta is a fraud? Yes, no, maybe so? I think it's fundamentally the difference between what is a champion of Ash's day versus what we have now. And even then, the concept of what is a champion and how ridiculously strong they are in Ash's day also went into flux. Remember Drake, the champion of the Orange Islands, way back in the day? Yeah, he had a ridiculously strong Dragonite with 10 frickin' moves. And yet he still ended up handing over a trophy to Ash because he did lose. Yes, this could just be early installment weirdness. Could isn't even the word, is early installment weirdness. Granted, the Orange Islands probably was an Elite Four arc that ended up getting changed because, well, Ash did lose the tournament, but still. It goes to show that the idea of this super powerful, mythologically strong champion, not to be confused with mythical Pokemon, is actually a more recent construct that the fans have adopted from the anime. This mentality wasn't always there. However, I think the idea of the super strong champion that is almost completely invincible is in service of a vision where Ash is kept at a certain level. It's easy to say that there is a nice out in case he gets too strong. Oh, he's totally not the champion, but he is strong. That way, you can keep having him be the protagonist for years to come. With Geeta, I feel like she's emblematic of a major shift in the anime's philosophy that started with Sun and Moon, though others can argue that this philosophy shift happened before. The champion is no longer the end goal. When we were young, we all wanted to be the very best, and the champion was the seat on the throne that we had to replace. And that goes for the games as well. Now when we get older, and the times have changed, the champion stopped being the only path and ended up being a path. This is even reflected in the Scarlet and Violet games. With the shift in the end goal, no wonder the shift also happened with the portrayal of the champion. But those are just my thoughts. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.